We know what ripple does. It shifts everything over to compensate for any kind of extraction that you make inside your timeline. But it also affects the dynamic trimming that we're doing. For example, let's say I want to bring my head here, this clip, to an endpoint on my timeline. So this is where I want the head to be. I'll hit the I key to set my endpoint, okay? I'm going to scrub away from this so you can see there's my endpoint. So now the focus point in my timeline is actually on clip 00090. You can see that it's highlighted by the white outline. But I want my edit to affect 00084. So I select 00084, and it is now going to be affected by my dynamic trimming that I'm about to do because it is selected. Now let me turn off ripple so we can see the difference of having ripple on and off. Now the hotkey to trim the head of this selected clip to the end point, the end mark, I hold the E key and I hit the I key. And as you would expect, the trim just took place. All the frames prior to the end mark are now gone because I just trimmed the head point for the selected clip to be at the same position as my end mark. Let me undo that. Let me turn on ripple. I'll hit the R key. Now I do the same thing. EI, you get a totally different result. It's going to compensate and ripple everything. It still created the amount of frames. It still edited the amount of frames that it did a second ago with ripple off, but instead of leaving the gap, it shifted everything over based on the amount of frames from the original position, the original frame that it was at for the head, to endpoint. So this is my whole thing I'm trying to stress. Ripple will change what is going to happen depending upon what dynamic trim or hotkey you are using. Let me clear out my endpoint. Let me hold the Alt and hit the I key. Now what if I want to trim the head to an out point? I hit the O key to set my out point. So you see there it is, okay? And then I'll select this clip once again. Ripple is on. I'll hold E and hit the O key. The same thing happened. It calculated the amount of frames from the original head to where the out point was and threw those frames away, created the dynamic edit, and shifted everything because ripple was on. Undo that. Turn ripple off. Again, hold the E key, hit the O key. What happens? We create the edit. The head moved to the actual out point because ripple was off. So that's how you can trim your head to the in and the out point, and also the different results whether ripple's on or off. Let me undo that. And then of course we have the ability to trim our tail to your in or your out. So I'm going to set an in point right there. Let's select this clip right here. Ripple is off right now, but I want to, let me move my cursor out of the way. I want to trim the tail of this clip 0090 to this endpoint. This time I hold Shift E and hit I, and you see we've trimmed our tail to the endpoint. Undo, turn on ripple, Shift E, I, big difference, right? Okay, let's say we want to trim the tail for this clip 0084 to the out point. Shift E, O, it's going to trim it with ripple on. Of course, I'm not going to go through it again because you know what's going to happen. If ripple is off, there's going to be a gap left there, okay? So reiterating, we just learned how we can trim our head and our tail of clips to our in and our out points. I'll hold Option X to clear my in and out. Now I want to show you how you can enter specific amounts or frames that you want your edits to be, whether it's your in, your out, or the actual cut. So we want to go and change the head for this, but I want to shift it. I want to move it 15 frames. So instead of me coming in here and trying to make sure I get to where I want my 15 frame edit to be, if I hold Control and Option and click right on that number amount, the 141, a calculator is going to open up over here. And now I can enter -15 and click the Enter button. And I just did a ripple edit on that by 15 frames. And obviously, if I come back again, Control Option, click on this, I enter 15 and hit Enter, we're going to create it and bring it back to the 141 where it was. Same thing goes obviously for your tail. Option, Control, click, I'll enter 28 as a number and click Enter. You'll see now that we just trimmed this by 28 frames. Okay, now what about the actual cut? See, I can select this cut and I can start to manipulate it. As soon as you see your select tool icon change when you select the cut. But I've got this cut selected. You can see it's selected because it's highlighted. Now, same thing, Control Option, click right on it, you're going to get the calculator again. Enter a value. I'm going to enter 15 again and choose enter, and I move the cut 15 frames forward. Same thing going backwards, obviously. Click on it, negative 15, enter. You'll see that it now shifts back to its original position. One more thing I want to mention about this calculator. So let's bring it back up. I'll hold Option and Control again and click on it to get the calculator. Notice that we had the add and subtract buttons up here. I showed you how I entered a value and clicked enter, whether it was minus 15 or 15. But let's do this. What if I enter 15 and I hit subtract? Notice what happens. It subtracts the 15 frames, and I can repeatedly do it until I am satisfied with the actual adjustment to my edit. I can choose the add button. And again, what's happening? We are continuously doing it over and over again. When you hit the enter button, it's going to be a one-time action. If you use the add and subtract buttons on those top there in that calculator, you can repeatedly adjust the edit. Now, I want to show you one more option as you are manipulating or editing. What if I want my positioner to always snap to my edit as I'm making it, as I'm doing my edit, so I can see the end result inside the player? We can go to our options over here once again and turn on focus on trim. Now, whenever I start to do a trim, you're going to notice that the cursor, the positioner, jumps and shows me the tail frame of this clip as I am manipulating. I can see what frame I am actually trimming it to. Same goes for the other side. I switch over, obviously, because I'm now trimming the head of this clip. The positioner now shows me the head frame. And let's say we put a dissolve in here. Let's say we put a default dissolve. So I'm going to hold Command and hit the T key, which puts my default dissolve in there. And now, if I want to manipulate that, one thing I have to do is I have to move the positioner first so I can access this. Now, as I start to manipulate and edit the cut, we can see both the in and out clip happening as we start to manipulate this, because we have this option on, focus on trim. One quick note about the default dissolve. It comes in at 10 frames, progressive. You can change this if you want inside of your preferences. Obviously, we can edit it after we create it, but if you want to change that, this is kind of going off at a tangent, but I just want to show it to you. If we go over to our options, again, our preferences, I could have used Command Comma, and I probably should have, since we're focusing on hotkeys. But if I go to my timeline tab, transition, see the default is set to 10. You can control whether it's up to cut, from cut, center, change the interpolation from linear. And you can also change the default wipe if you want, but that's going far. That's another video maybe. But I just wanted to show you that you can control your transitions in here by setting that up.